I want to start by telling you the story of Mexico Beach, Florida, where in 2018, the idyllic beachfront community was hit by a storm. That storm was Hurricane Michael, and it was a Category 4 when it hit, with wind speeds over 150 miles per hour. And it leveled the town. 93% of some 1,600 structures there were destroyed. But there was one building, which you can see right in front there, which came through with almost no damage at all. It had been built to withstand hurricanes, and it was a miracle standing alone in a sea of devastation. That building and common sense inspired the town to adopt strong new building codes, with requirements for stronger roofs and higher base elevations so they could avoid a similar catastrophe from wiping out their town ever again. But 2 years later, the new codes were radically scaled back, leaving in place codes only slightly above the minimum for the state of Florida, which is a fairly low bar. Because people would rather build cheaply and quickly than build something that would sustain, which could overcome an event that may or may not happen. And also because people are good at convincing themselves that once it's already happened, it probably won't happen again. They'll get lucky in the future. I'm Patrick Walsh. I'm the CEO of Iron Core Labs, and I find this behavior to be fascinating and very, very familiar. I don't work in construction and I don't live in a hurricane zone, but I do work in cybersecurity, and the parallels are striking. At Iron Core, we offer the materials needed to build stronger applications in the cloud, applications that exceed the minimal requirements set by the government. We're like the hurricane roofs of cloud applications. And like the town of Mexico Beach, not everyone chooses to adopt that pattern. And so we see people that have problems that repeat itself over and over and over again. T-Mobile is today's poster child and case in point. Since 2018, they've publicly disclosed 9 major breaches. 2 this year alone so far, and we're just in the middle of 2023. And after a 2021 breach, they settled a class action lawsuit for one of them. And part of the settlement was a promise to invest $150 million in data protection and cybersecurity over 2 years, which sounds amazing. But if we put it in perspective, that's $75 million per year, less than 0.1% of their annual revenue. Way insufficient for their complexity and size. And they were forced to make that investment. And after 2 years, they don't have to keep doing it. It's mind-blowing. Much like in Mexico Beach, at least initially, governments have realized that companies aren't likely to do the right thing without extra incentives and encouragement and possibly penalties. And that's how we wind up with these weighty laws like the EU's GDPR, which is the world's leading privacy law and went into effect back in 2018 with the goal of pushing the industry to do better by changing the economics for those who don't. And they're not the only ones. Here in the US, privacy laws are mushrooming. Ours here in Colorado went into effect at the beginning of this month. California was first, and theirs went into effect in 2020, but other states are following at an increasing pace. And these laws aren't just passing in red or blue states. They're universal. And they are changing the equations, and they are forcing people to do more of the things that are equivalent to those hurricane roofs being added to places in hurricane zones. And at the federal level, we have some of the most interesting proposals to come out in years. In March, the White House released their National Cybersecurity Strategy, which outlines a plan that proposes a combination of executive orders and legislation to, among other things, reshape the incentives in the market to bring better security across the board. In particular, there are 2 parts that really hold my attention, both in that third pillar, which is titled Shape Market Forces to Drive Security and Resilience. Section 3.1 is about holding stewards of data, like T-Mobile, accountable so that ignoring security issues isn't just a slight annoyance and a bit of hassle to them financially. This could be huge. But even more impactful, in my view, is Section 3.3, which would make software companies more like car manufacturers when it comes to liability. See, with a car, if the driver is responsible for a wreck, okay, it's on the driver. But if the car fails to operate as expected or isn't safe in some expected way, then the manufacturer shares or even owns the liability. And so it would be under this plan with software companies. If they push out unsafe software and don't take reasonable measures to fix it and keep it safe for their customers, then they're responsible for what happens if their software was used to breach some company. Today, it's the company's fault, even if it's the fault of the software that they used. It could truly transform the entire industry, how software is made, how it's tested, how it's delivered, and how it's secured. But regulations are a heavy-handed way to force changes in the market. There's no doubt about it. They aren't necessarily bad, but they do have consequences. So right now, for instance, most of the cool new AI stuff and the fastest adopted product in history, Facebook's Twitter clone, aren't available in the EU. The innovations are happening here in the US, where the privacy laws are, so far at least, less stifling. But that said, these laws aren't anti-innovation across the board. In fact, one could argue that they have spurred a ton of innovation, just in different areas. And I'm talking now about PETs, or privacy-enhancing technologies. By turning your personal information and mine into regulated data, akin to healthcare or financial data, these privacy laws have driven companies to rethink what data they keep and how they protect what they do keep. It's spawned an entire class of products that can encrypt data while keeping the data usable and useful for specific purposes. Without these regulations, this class of products would never have left academia. Even here in the US, as it happens, more than 50%, over half of AI projects today aren't making it to production, primarily because of security and privacy concerns. And the projects that are making it to production, at least the ones using these new large language models and such, they're mostly built on top of public data like customer support documents and documentation and so forth. But the eye-popping AI value lies with the private data. Just imagine what these systems could do if we could query them about what needs our attention right now in a company or in our private life, and if they could help with the routine and time-sucking tasks, freeing us up to focus more on what's important. And if we could apply that type of knowledge and computer assistance to problems in healthcare and finance and energy and beyond. But while privacy and security issues are in the way, these use cases are largely out of reach, except for toy demonstrations or overeager startups that don't understand that the enterprises won't pay for things if they can't be secured and kept private, even here in the US. And that's where we at Ironcore Labs come back into the picture, because we've been building innovative data protection solutions for some years now. But just this month, we announced our newest breakthrough innovation, Cloaked AI, which locks up the AI data while keeping it safe and usable. Using this new type of PET, companies can unlock the AI use cases that rely on private data and unlock the value that can transform our world in ways we can barely imagine. This is privacy-preserving, data-in-use encryption, and it's a game changer for AI and for the industry. And with that, I'm out of time. Thanks for listening.